American Electric Power is one of the largest electric utilities in the United States. Zero harm is at the heart of everything we do at AEP. We deliver electricity and custom energy solutions to nearly 5.4 million customers in 11 states. No part of our operations is more important than the safety and health of the people working for our company.
You know, zero harm is making sure that every single person who comes to work on AEP property, whether they're an employee or a contractor, go home in the same or better condition than they came to work.
It really means that all injuries are preventable. There's no reason for someone to get hurt at work.
AEP has a learning-centric culture. It focuses on looking at events objectively so we can learn how to get better. We communicate and openly share what we learn so the same events aren't repeated.
So what I love about the learning-centric approach is when an event occurs anywhere in the system, it doesn't matter if it's an AEP employee or a contractor, we can share those lessons learned immediately.
Zero harm for us is all about culture. It's about what we believe, how we behave, the outcomes we produce, and the experiences we deliver.
AEP's company-wide life-saving rules are the foundation of our safety culture. They help protect us from known hazards, including de-energizing, testing, and grounding electrical equipment. No one shall violate a clearance by removing an isolation or hold tag or removing a lock. Identifying line of fire hazards and addressing them before beginning work. Having a qualified observer when working on overhead energized equipment. Using fall protection when working aloft, wearing the appropriate personal protective equipment or PPE for the job, performing system work with the proper authorization, following procedures for confined or enclosed space entry, only entering trenches that are protected from cave-ins, wearing flotation devices when drowning hazards exist, not stepping or jumping over open water gaps when drowning hazards exist. AEP's policies to prevent distracted driving also apply to contractors. The policies prohibit drivers from using cell phones and hand-free devices while driving for AEP business and while on AEP property. If you want to use a mobile device, you must be parked in a safe location away from traffic. Driving is a critical task that deserves your focus.
Working in the utility industry has unique challenges. AEP works to control those issues by having standard company-wide expectations for anyone working on our projects.
In the workplace, you have your area that you're responsible for, that you're accountable for, and you need to make sure that area and everything that goes on within it is safe. But you also have accountability to help that person next to you who may be in a hazard that they don't recognize or they're not seeing it.
These are the basic requirements. People are trained and qualified to do the work they're assigned. This includes OSHA 30-hour training for supervisors or OSHA 10-hour training for general employees of high-risk contractors. For all contractors, at least 2 people on site must be trained in first aid, CPR, and how to use an automated external defibrillator, or AED. Being qualified also includes having the right mindset.
When we're accountable for our actions and our behaviors, if I'm having a bad day, I need to share that with my crew members and say, you know, I may not be the best person for this task today.
You know that somebody's having a bad day, that means you might ask them, are you okay to do the work today? Or maybe you should take another job and I'll do that job for you because your head just isn't in the game.
Alcohol and drugs that aren't taken for medical purposes are not allowed on AEP sites. Everyone working on an AEP site must be sober. If you're taking a prescribed or over-the-counter medication that could impact your ability to perform your job, you are responsible for telling your supervisor. Another basic requirement is that everyone on a crew must understand verbal and written instructions. This includes signs and labels associated with the work. When a crew has non-English speakers, there must be 2 bilingual crew members available to help with communication. These individuals must be immediately available if there's an emergency or site orientation. Bilingual crews must have at least one English copy of all documents and reports, including job briefing forms. AEP cares about how contractors perform in the field. We monitor, observe, and evaluate performance. We do this to learn and share information to improve the safety performance.
It's never about who is wrong. It's about what can we learn about this? What can we do differently so that we can prevent injury from occurring again?
AEP's expectations are in the safety and health supplemental terms and conditions. You are responsible for understanding and complying with these expectations.
Job planning is the beginning of a safe outcome.
Everyone working for AEP is expected to plan their work. Planning is a critical part of understanding how to do a job safely.
Very seldom do things go as planned. So when you're out in the field, you make your job plan, and then when something goes in a different direction than you intended, you'll have that extra layer of protection there.
Work planning is required by your contract, and AEP must approve all job briefing forms. A complete job briefing follows OSHA's requirements of defining the task, identify roles and responsibilities, identifying hazards associated with the work, determining how to mitigate hazards, documenting procedures to be used and any special precautions, how energy sources will be controlled, personal protective equipment to be used, emergency response information, and the number of briefings to be held. Job briefings happen at critical parts of the day, before work begins, when any aspect of work changes from the original plan, and before restarting work after long breaks like lunch. Every crew member must participate and provide input during the briefings. Briefings make sure everyone is on the same page. You understand the steps of the job, you understand what you're doing, and who is responsible for what.
We know we're not perfect, but we can aspire to be perfect, and we can aspire to make sure that we have all of the mechanisms that we need to have in place to make sure that people are doing the right thing every day.
An emergency response plan has to be in place and everyone must understand it. At a minimum, it must include a specific list of procedures to follow for different types of emergencies, like severe weather, a fire, or an injured worker. The communication methods the site will use if an emergency happens. A list of emergency contacts, the location and name of local emergency services, and the location and directions to the nearest medical facility. If an incident does happen, it must be reported after the scene is secure, regardless of the severity. If you experience an event that requires treatment beyond first aid for an injury, or involves significant damage to equipment and/or property, immediately stop what you are doing. Do not disturb the scene of an incident unless necessary to attend to injured people or to prevent additional injury or property damage. Immediately notify your AEP contact of the event. A call or other verbal notification is enough. Work may not resume and no items at the scene may be moved or discarded until authorized by an AEP representative.
Zero harm is reflected in everything we do, including how we behave.
Safety is won and lost every single day, every moment of every day. And it's important for us, therefore, to be focused on it every single second of every day.
The behaviors that need to be clearly defined are really pretty simple. Identify and address hazards every time.
We expect everyone to show these behaviors. Don't compromise safety for quality, cost, or schedule. Stop when uncertain. Look out for each other. Plan safety into everything you do. Have a questioning attitude.
We absolutely do not want you to take a shortcut because we care about you and your crew so that you can go home safe in the same condition or better than you came to work that day.
While working on AEP projects, you are a representative of this company. Act in a professional manner. AEP has sole discretion on who can work on our sites. Individuals who don't comply with our expectations will not be allowed on an AEP site.
You're still working for AEP, you're still working for our customers. And so our expectation is that you follow all the safety policies, that you make sure that you're able to work safely, that you have the right equipment.
You are responsible for having personal protective equipment for your job. The PPE must be in good condition, free from holes, frays, and damage. Additional protection may be required. Check your company's PPE assessment or the job's special environmental conditions.
You know, how we manifest our expectations with contractors is very similar to how we manifest it with our employees.
These shared expectations mean AEP representatives will visit contractor job sites. These observations are not punitive.
We're going to be watching to see what's going on, what are the lessons learned, what are the good catches. We expect our contractors to tell us about good catches. We expect our employees to tell us about good catches. We expect them to be learning and learning-centric, where if there's been a mistake, that they're truly understanding the root cause of it and trying to get better.
You know, I've heard, whatever happens on the dock stays on the dock, or whatever happens in the plant stays in the plant, which means we're not sharing information. And I think that is old thinking. That needs to go away.
A qualified and competent supervisor must be on site at all times. This person directs and observes the work. They can only perform other work if it doesn't interfere with their ability to supervise, direct, and observe their team's work. If a contractor allows a subcontractor to perform work without the contractor present, a qualified and competent person must be assigned to the work site at all times.
Every individual is a leader in some way.
When you're a leader, people are watching you. They're watching what you do. They're watching what you don't do.
There are times when a dedicated safety and health professional is required on your site. Depending on the site, size of a crew, and contract, more than one safety and health professional might be required on site.
All of us are accountable not only to ourselves and to our teammates, but to our families and their families. Because that's the whole goal of Zero Harm to begin with, is that everyone is safe at work and they're safe at home.
Slips, trips, and falls are a leading cause of injury for AEP employees and contractors. Clean work sites can help prevent these types of injuries. Everyone is required to clean their work site after completing each task and at the end of the day. This includes keeping all trash in appropriate containers, throwing trash and debris away in a timely manner, storing materials outside of the workspace around energized lines or equipment. The contractor shall keep AEP informed of all hazardous chemicals being used, keeping safety data sheets on file, and notifying AEP and the appropriate regulatory body if there's a chemical release or spill. If you are working in a substation or switchyard, additional station entry training is required before performing work in either of these environments.
Some sites may require additional protections like barricades, grounds, hot work permits, traffic control, and confined space permits. Use barricades to keep people, vehicles, and equipment out of restricted areas. Inspect and replace these signs as needed. Grounds need to be in good condition. Inspect them before using them and test them in accordance with state, local, and federal guidelines. Be aware there may be additional requirements for grounding depending on the site and project. You must comply with AEP's welding, cutting, and brazing policy. Hot work permits are required for all jobs that involve an open flame or work that can produce sparks or smoke. The permits are only valid for the date, shift, and location written on the permit. A fire watch must also happen whenever these types of activities take place. Use extra protections when working near roadways. Develop and maintain a traffic management plan that details road signs, parking arrangements, speed limits, and segregation from pedestrian traffic. Confined and enclosed spaces pose unique risks. Contractors must comply with AEP's confined enclosed space entry policy. This includes classification and monitoring tools, permits, and checklists. Work with your AEP representative to coordinate communication in these situations. When you're working on an AEP job, have the proper cutting tools available. Knives are never the first option. Use cutting tools like wire cutters, side cutters, snips, or other tools. If these aren't available, use a safety utility knife with an automatic retracting blade and wear cut-resistant gloves while using the knife. If you're doing work that requires a grinder, make sure it's the safest tool for the job. If a grinder can get locked in the on position, do a hazard analysis to determine if it's a safe option to use. Handheld grinders between 4.5 and 6 inches must have a safety clutch. These help prevent kickback. It takes multiple steps to prevent injuries around mobile equipment. You, your team, and other people in the area are at risk of line-of-fire hazards. Start every day by inspecting the equipment. Follow the manufacturer's instructions and document inspections. Establish a work zone around the equipment before starting a job. Look for anything in the work zone that could be energized, such as power lines, transformers, and underground wires. There are potentially deadly consequences when any part of a piece of mobilized equipment comes into contact with an energized source. Know where the moving parts of your equipment like the boom, load line, or lifting and rigging accessories will need to reach. If there's something that could be energized in your work zone, determine if the equipment can get within the trigger distance. If it can, assign a qualified observer and do not encroach minimum approach distances. You can find those distances on Vero for all AEP business units. After establishing the work zone, set up barricades. If you have temporary ground rods or anchors up, the barricade should be beyond those. Only the qualified observer can let people into barricaded areas. Work aloft has to stop and move away from any energized sources before someone can enter the area. There are AEP policies for excavation work that must be followed. Use an excavation checklist to make sure all utilities in the area are identified and marked. Every day, you have to document inspections of excavations, the adjacent areas, and the protective systems. During this inspection, look for cave-ins, indications that your protective systems are failing, hazardous atmospheres, and any other hazardous conditions. Inspections must be done before starting work and as needed during the shift. If it rains or other hazards appear, perform an inspection again. These are AEP's expectations for you while you're working on one of our projects. Never lose sight of working safe.
I think there's a commitment that if you can't get the job done safely, then stop. Don't do the job. And if the lights need to stay off a little bit longer, then they do.
So one of the things that I want to say to each and every person who's out there who are working so hard every day to keep our lights on, I'd like you to think about your families. I'd like you to think about your loved ones and how they count on you. And they're counting on you to come home safe. And they're counting on your crew members to come home safe.
American Electric Power ranks among the nation's largest generators of electricity, providing service to more than 5 million customers in 11 states. With nearly a century of innovation in coal, gas-fired, hydroelectric, nuclear, and wind electrical generation technologies, AEP was the first in the country to develop the extremely efficient 765 kilovolt transmission line. With more than 40,000 miles of electricity transmission lines, AEP owns not only the largest transmission network in the nation, but more than all other U.S. utilities combined. Setting the highest standards for technical innovation is not AEP's only strength. They are also known for setting industry standards for safety. AEP's Scott Moore.
AEP's expectations of our contractors and employees are extraordinarily high. Every day, on every job, and every time, we expect you to work safely. This goal is summed up by our company's philosophy of zero harm. To accomplish this, we need to work together as team members. For instance, if you observe a safety issue that could potentially cause problems down the road, we want you to speak up and bring it to the attention of the rest of your team members.
You may have worked for a company that said safety is number one, but it became obvious their actions said something else. At AEP, we mean it. AEP means it when we say the safety of our people is our top priority. I tell the folks that report to me, they are all empowered to stop the job. I know speaking up is different than the way things were done years ago, and different than many of us were taught, but it is important. If the scope of the task changes, conditions change, or you aren't 100% sure of what you're supposed to do, I expect you to stop the job. Step back and talk with your supervisor. Don't be afraid to ask questions, then refocus and finish the work safely. So, if you see something, say something.
Everyone should expect a safe environment to go to work to each day. This comes by everyone being on guard and consciously aware 24/7 of what's going on around us. It means we're constantly asking, what if this happens, in relation to the work we or our fellow co-workers are doing. We consider all who work on our property to be part of the AEP family. That means we mutually care for each other by watching out for each other. If you see something being done by a coworker that does not appear safe, you have an obligation to question, is that safe? Doing so shows we have each other's backs.
The Transmission Business Unit of American Electric Power has established safety expectations for all who work on our projects. From these, AEP's transmission supplemental safety terms and conditions have been implemented that all contract firms are required to know and follow. Working with high voltage electrical transmission is a very complex and highly hazardous business. That is why AEP insists that all contractors make sure their workers are aware of and are complying with these contractual safety obligations. As an industry leader in job site safety, be aware that AEP or an AEP representative will be continually monitoring and evaluating your workers' safety performance. Additionally, AEP Transmission has developed several tools to assist our contract firms. These include, but are not limited to, the AEP Transmission Contractor Safety Handbook, Project-Specific Safety and Environmental Plan, or PSSEP, Job Briefing and THA Forms, Emergency Action Plan Template, and various safety directives. Prior to entering a project site, contractor personnel shall complete the AEP Transmission Contractor Safety and the Contractor Environmental Orientations. This training is available online at aeptcs.com. The training is valid for 1 calendar year, and contractor personnel shall refresh this training prior to March 31st of each year. When completed, a hard hat sticker shall be issued and must be worn by contractor personnel while on AEP property. To ensure a safe workplace, the contractor agrees that the high-risk safety terms and conditions apply to all of its subcontractors on AEP sites. They shall have qualified and competent supervision at the site at all times to direct and observe the work. Prior to using a subcontractor, the contractor shall obtain approval from AEP, and the qualifications of the subcontractor shall be verified by submitting documentation via email to formc@aeptcs.com. Subcontractors have appointed qualified and competent individuals to be present at all times in order to direct and observe the work. Accurate records and reports are collected and maintained, including, but not limited to, licenses, training, personnel, safety, incident, environmental, and all required testing. All personnel have the authority to immediately stop the contractor's work in order to provide a safe and healthy working environment. If your contract exceeds 5 days' duration, you will be required to submit a project-specific safety and environmental plan. The PSSEP must be submitted via email to the AEP-assigned TCR, project manager, environmental advisor, and safety advisor for the work. The PSSEP template is located online at the AEP Transmission Contractor Safety Portal, aeptcs.com. A PSSEP shall, at a minimum, include information regarding the following: project details, the construction execution plan, emergency planning, environmental protection plans, project safety management plan, a task hazard analysis, civil work, excavations plans, substation and switchyards work plans, T-line project specifics plans, specifics on material used including delivery, handling, and the laydown area, a list of equipment in use, the disciplinary program.
When we're in a substation, if we're inside of a clearance, does that qualify as an NRO?
Upon receipt, the contractor should collaborate with AEP to address any issues or informational gaps. The PSSEP will often need to be modified and updated to accommodate the work throughout the life of the project. The PSSEP shall be communicated to all personnel on site and available at any time. Contractor and subcontractor personnel shall be appropriately trained, qualified, and competent to perform assigned tasks and associated work. Qualifications and training shall be documented by the contractor and made available to AEP upon request. All contractor and subcontractor site supervisors shall have successfully completed the OSHA 30-hour training. This training shall be completed prior to contractor and subcontractor personnel assuming the supervisory position. All contractor and subcontractor workers shall have successfully completed the OSHA 10-hour certification for construction training. New contractor and subcontractor personnel shall be trained within 14 calendar days of starting their first assignment on any AEP site. A minimum of 2 currently certified persons in first aid, CPR, and automated external defibrillators, or AED, shall be present for each crew. The contractor shall provide a full-time dedicated on-site safety representative for each project with 20 or more total personnel on site. This includes contractor and subcontractor personnel combined. For each additional 20 personnel, contractor and subcontractor personnel combined, the contractor shall provide another full-time on-site safety representative. These dedicated safety representatives shall, at a minimum, have successfully completed one of the following: a professional safety certification from an industry-recognized organization, or a college degree in a safety-related field, or at least 5 years demonstrable safety management experience. In addition to the above, the safety representative shall have successfully completed all of the following: current certification in administration of first aid, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR, and automated external defibrillators training, or AED, and formal training in root cause analysis investigation. AEP reserves the right to reject a representative or require additional safety representation based on the complexity of the work. Even if the work requires fewer than 20 total personnel, AEP has the right to request the contractor provide a full-time safety representative for the work. If there is a full-time safety representative assigned, a site safety observation report shall be performed and documented daily. If no full-time safety representative is required, then the contractor site supervisor shall perform and document the project safety observation report once per site per week. It takes planning and preparation to do the job right and do it safely. The contractor must use pre-job briefings and task hazard analysis to pre-plan the site's work. The development of an effective job briefing requires the participation and collaboration of all crew members to adequately capture the potential hazards associated with the work. In addition to the job briefing, the THA document shall identify all potential worksite risks and include a detailed step-by-step plan for the task to be performed, explaining any specific requirements of the associated project, the risks and hazards associated with the task, and the measures the contractor will take to eliminate or control these hazards. It is the responsibility of the contractor to review and communicate this information to any other persons who enter the site. Review of the THA shall occur prior to the start of each task, each day after lunch or during any significant work break, and any time the work procedure changes. Each crew member must sign his or her name verifying he or she understands and will abide by the THA. The contractor shall ensure the THAs are available on the site at all times. Additionally, the contractor shall implement a daily stretch and flex program prior to the start of work. Severe weather, fire, or an injured worker. Whatever it may be, every contractor must have a response plan in place to address potential emergencies. Your emergency response plan needs to be communicated to and understood by all your employees. The plan shall include, at a minimum, a specific list of procedures to follow in the event of given emergencies, predetermined on-site communication methods, a list of emergency contacts, the location and name of local emergency services, and the location and directions, including maps, to the nearest medical facility. All contractor personnel shall participate in driving the most efficient route to the nearest medical facility prior to performing any work on site. Consideration shall be given to occupational health clinics. If a helicopter is the most appropriate means of transportation because the distance is too great, the contractor shall contact the helicopter provider and have an appropriate landing zone planned. On any job site, there is the potential for safety-related incidents. After the scene is secure, the incident shall be immediately reported by phone to the AEP TCR and project manager. Events of a more serious nature shall be reported to the transmission contractor safety and health manager. Serious incidents include, but are not limited to, injuries requiring transport to a hospital or other medical facility, customer outages, and property damage. But regardless if the incident was minor or serious, following initial notification, the contractor shall complete and submit an incident report via the Transmission Contractor Safety Portal at aeptcs.com. This initial written report shall be completed by 8 a.m. the day following the incident. In addition, within 48 hours of the incident, The contractor shall submit a detailed written report, which at a minimum shall include the AEP Contractor Incident Report, the Contractor Internal Incident Report, pictures of the scene, witness statements, and the THA for the task. A clean worksite is a safe worksite. AEP requires all contractors and workers to maintain a clean worksite. They must clean their worksite after completing each task and at the end of each day. The contractor shall keep all trash in appropriate containers and shall dispose of it in a proper and timely manner. The contractor shall not store materials in the workspace around energized lines or equipment. Safety data sheets, or SDSs, for all chemicals on site shall be kept on file by the contractor and made available for contractor personnel and AEP's review upon request. If there is a chemical release or spill, it also must be immediately reported to your AEP TCR or field services representative. Working on AEP high-risk projects is no place to add even more danger. Therefore, all contractor and subcontractor personnel shall complete and pass the following drug and alcohol testing. Pre-AEP employment, no more than 48 hours before coming on the AEP site, at least annually, that is, once every 12 months. Records of such testing shall be maintained by the contractor in accordance with state, local, and federal regulations and shall be made available to AEP upon request. Screening substances and their associated cutoff limits will be the same as listed in the AEP General Terms and Conditions. The contractor shall incur all costs associated with the drug and alcohol testing identified in this section. A job site is only safe if everyone does his or her work as a professional. Unprofessional conduct can endanger yourself and others. For that reason, AEP may deny access to its work sites to any individual who fails to comply with the safety provisions or who demonstrates, in AEP's opinion, a lack of compliance with safety or environmental requirements. All types of hazards are present on a job site. One way of protecting ourselves from these hazards is with the use of personal protective equipment, or PPE. The PPE must be in compliance with all AEP, local, state, and federal guidelines, such as OSHA and ANSI. All workers are required to use appropriate personal protective equipment in all operations where there is an exposure to hazardous conditions. The contractor shall ensure that this equipment is maintained in good working order as recommended by the manufacturer. At a minimum, the following PPE is required while in any construction area: a hard hat, ANSI-approved safety glasses or prescription safety glasses with side shields, approved hearing protection devices in designated areas or as necessary to meet OSHA requirements, high visibility and reflective clothing as the outermost layer on the upper body, protective toe footwear that meets the safety toe specifications of current ASTM F2413 standard, known as safety toe shoes. Open-toed, open-heeled, athletic footwear, and tennis shoes are prohibited on any job site. Work gloves appropriate for the potential hazards of the job tasks. Note, jersey gloves are not permitted to be worn as the only means of protection. Fall protection is required for all workers 100% of the time while climbing or changing location on poles, towers, or similar structures. Fall protection is required when exposed to a fall of 6 feet or more. Fall protection may include a guardrail system or fall arrest harnesses and lines. Arc flash rated clothing is required for qualified electrical workers while working on or near exposed energized parts of transmission and sub-transmission lines and any station equipment. This clothing must be in compliance with AEP, local, state, and federal guidelines. When in a substation, unless identified differently, the arc flash boundary to exposed energized parts is 15 feet. Unless identified differently, the arc flash boundary to exposed energized parts of 50 to less than 300 volts in a control house is 3 feet 6 inches. Arc flash clothing shall, at a minimum, meet an arc rating of 8 calories per square centimeter. All outer layers for the upper and lower body shall have the appropriate arc flash rating. When a shirt is worn as the outer layer, it shall be long sleeves. Sleeves shall be rolled down and buttoned with the shirt tails tucked into the trousers. When an additional layer is required, such as a coat or overalls, it also shall have the appropriate arc flash rating. Working in substations or switchyards poses unique hazards. With up to 765,000 volts nearby, you want to pay attention to AEP's safety expectations. Prior to entry of an energized substation or switchyard, all contractor personnel are required to complete OSHA-approved station entry training. Personnel who are not station entry qualified shall be accompanied at all times by a qualified supervisor. At a minimum, all personnel shall be trained and comfortable with the skills and techniques necessary to distinguish exposed live parts from other parts of electric equipment, determine the nominal voltage of exposed live parts, and know the minimum approach distances corresponding to the voltage to which they will be exposed. The contractor shall maintain a record of this training and shall make such records available to AEP. When working in a substation or switchyard, the contractor shall keep all gates closed and locked at all times, unless under direct observation by an attendant. Upon entry or exit of a substation, the contractor shall notify the appropriate dispatch authority. If the supervisor leaves the station, all affected personnel shall also leave the site. The contractor shall define work areas and drive paths within the substation or switchyard with barricades to delineate safe distances to structures, equipment, and fixed objects. Finally, when working with any electric tools, all extension cords and electric hand tools shall be plugged into a GFCI provided by the contractor. Contractor personnel shall not rely on the receptacles on the site. Extension cords shall be used per the manufacturer's recommendations and should not be connected together or stretch beyond their reasonable length. Mobile equipment such as trucks, excavators, bulldozers, and cranes may be at your worksite. Before beginning equipment operations, the contractor shall identify the work zone to determine if any equipment or any part of the equipment's maximum working radius, including the load, load line, boom, and lifting accessories, could encroach the trigger distance to energized lines or equipment. The trigger distance for non-qualified electrical workers is defined as 20 feet for less than 345 kilovolts and 50 feet for 345 kilovolts or greater. For qualified electrical workers, these distances are defined as 15 feet for less than 345 kilovolts and 30 feet for 345 kilovolts or greater. If the trigger distance to energized lines or equipment would be encroached, the contractor shall conduct a documented planning meeting with the operator and the other workers who will be in the area of the equipment or load to review the location of the energized lines or equipment. The planning meeting shall address the steps and provisions that will be implemented to prevent encroachment, including delineating the work zone, positioning of the equipment, the voltage with applicable minimum approach distances, and the use of available engineering controls. For example, proximity alarms, range limiting devices, insulating protective material, and barricades. The contractor shall also erect and maintain an elevated warning line, barricades, or line of signs, which shall be in view of the equipment operators. These lines, barricades, or signs shall be equipped with flags or similar high visibility markings at the minimum approach distance. And the contractor shall assign dedicated qualified observers if any equipment will encroach within 10 feet while traveling below overhead lines and equipment, or if any part of the equipment's maximum working radius, including the load, load line, boom, and lifting accessories, could encroach the trigger distance. These observers' sole responsibility is to watch the separation between the conductor and the equipment, load line, and load, and to communicate any warnings to the operator and all persons involved in the work. If a qualified observer becomes unavailable, all work activities shall be stopped, even if only temporarily, until the observer is available. Other AEP mobile equipment requirements include daily documented equipment inspections to be performed by each operator. These inspections shall include all safety and operational features as per the manufacturer's Safe Operating Manual or guidance. No person shall ride on equipment when it is in operation. Backing up motor vehicles should be avoided wherever possible. Solutions to this include taking a pull-through instead. If backing cannot be avoided, employees should back upon arrival. A second employee, if present, shall be used as a spotter while backing. Aerial devices shall be barricaded to protect workers on the ground from falling objects or touching the aerial device if it accidentally contacts energized conductors. The barricaded area shall also be extended beyond any temporary ground rod or anchor. When the barricaded area needs to be entered, the observer shall confirm that all work aloft is stopped and that the bucket, work platform, or boom has been moved out to a safe distance from nearby energized conductors or sources. Work will only restart after the observer has confirmed that the barricaded area is clear. When a crane is in operation, no person shall be permitted within the barricaded radius of the crane. Cranes shall be equipped with an anti-two-block device. If the equipment being used is incapable of being retrofitted with this device, it shall be removed and replaced by a more modern piece of equipment. When any aerial devices are in use, they shall be grounded. Where permanent grounding sources are not available, a remote temporary ground rod or an anchor shall be used. When a temporary ground rod is used, it is to be driven into the ground for its entire length if possible, but never less than 2 feet into the ground to provide the best ground contact. And equipment with a boom, mast, bucket, or bed shall be stowed and fully cradled before moving. When working at AEP, contractors shall utilize an excavation checklist to ensure all utilities and designated earth disturbance areas have been researched and identified. And they shall provide and maintain above-ground color-coded markers for high-hazard utilities such as gas, electricity, fiber optic, and pressurized lines. The contractor shall ensure that all excavations are barricaded and shall document each separate excavation and trench activity. An inspection shall be conducted by a competent person prior to the start of work and as needed throughout the shift. Inspection shall also be made after every rainstorm or any other hazard-increasing occurrence. For drilled excavations, the contractor shall comply with the following. A guardrail system shall protect any drilled excavation greater than 30 inches in diameter and 6 feet in depth. The guardrail shall be no less than 6 feet from the edge of the excavation. Contractor personnel who must enter the guardrail system shall be protected from falling by a personal fall arrest system. Drilled excavation work also requires a fall retrieval plan, which shall include local EMS rescue capabilities. Prior to beginning any excavations inside energized stations, verbal approval shall be secured from AEP. Non-destructive excavation methods, such as hand digging or hydrovac excavating, should be considered for initial use to determine the location of any potential utilities. Non-destructive excavation may be required to complete the job after AEP reviews the site. For every crew that has at least one non-English speaking member, the contractor shall provide a minimum of 2 bilingual personnel able to communicate with all members of the crew. On AEP transmission projects, grounds are often used. The location of all grounds on AEP transmission lines and stations shall be inspected prior to each use. Installed and removed, maintaining minimum approach distance. Flagged. Tracked and documented by the contractor as to their placement and inspections. For those working with control cables, contractor personnel shall have a second person verify that it is the proper cable and that it is de-energized. Only specifically designed wire skinning cutters shall be used. Pocket knives and/or razor knives like box cutters or carpet knives are not permitted for the purposes of wire skinning. Any activities involving an open flame, sparks, or smoke, including but not limited to welding, CAD welding, torch cutting, soldering, and grinding, will require a hot work permit. These permits are valid for only the date, shift, and location indicated. And a fire watch shall be maintained whenever welding, cutting, or spark-producing operations take place. When using pneumatic air hose assemblies, hose safety whip checks shall be utilized. Guard structures, including line equipment used as a guard, shall be installed prior to disconnecting the conductor and shall remain in place until the conductor is clipped in. The contractor shall develop and maintain a traffic management plan that details road signage and delineation, parking arrangements, speed limits, and segregation from pedestrian traffic. The execution of this plan shall comply with the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices and local, state, or federal requirements. This includes placing warning signs installed at locations where overhead lines have been identified. Warning signs shall be visible for all directions of travel, including site ingress and egress. These signs shall be no less than 36 inches by 36 inches and placed at an appropriate height to draw attention. Bilingual warning signs shall be posted whenever needed.
AEP realizes that many of our contractors already have excellent safety programs in place. The AEP Contractor Safety Program simply ensures consistency amongst our contractors and our employees. When you work for AEP, you are considered part of the AEP family. We expect you to share the same goal of all of our employees, and that is to do zero harm. We accomplish this by mutually caring for each other and staying constantly vigilant, making sure everyone is following the safety standards. This will help ensure that all who work for us can go home to their families uninjured and unharmed at the end of each day. Thank you for your time.